do not come from a design, architecture, maker background, right? I picked up my first tool and started making about at the age of 35. Learned something completely new and alien to me. Being a girl from Delhi, I did not even nail a nail in the wall or hammer a nail in the wall. We always had a bhaiya for everything. So we never solved our own problems growing up. So for me to, at 35, pick up a power tool and start building something and making something for myself was so intoxicating. You can look up various databases. Women-owned businesses are an extreme minority. And then you go from a patriarchal narrative to an even more patriarchal narrative when you choose something like carpentry, woodworking, construction. These are not feminine fields. These are not what women are supposed to do. This is my place of worship. This is my place of meditation. This is my place of peace. I can forget everything that's going on in my life once I'm in this space. Woodworking as a woman is an interesting experience because the things I have to prepare for are a little bit different than maybe others. So one of the first things is put up my hair. Now later today we'll find out why we need all these pencils. You know, you have the carpenters with these pencils behind the ear. We'll find out why. But in the meantime, because it doesn't really fit here, I have pencils in my hair. The other thing is, you know, there's vanity. I'm a woman. My nails are always dirty. We are constantly working with stains and paints and things like that penetrate the surfaces and under our nails. And I cannot get them clean no matter what. So, black nails, the answer to pretty much world's old problems. So it's like a double whammy where I knew I was stepping into something where I might fail and fail and fail and fail again. But I also knew I could never be defeated. As a child, you might look at failure and think that's the end of the world for you, but I think I failed so much in life and still moved on. And one close friend of mine recently used the word indestructible for me. And that made me feel better than any other compliment used for me. Conquering failure and conquering challenges just became a way I lived life. So that just ended up making me confident the way I am today. I grew up in a world where we had no television at all and no other sources of entertainment. So I read a lot of books. I read this book at the age of 10. This was before I even learned terms like women's empowerment. That didn't happen for 2 more decades, but I know what it felt like to want something for myself. Understand that it'll come with challenges. Understand that it'll come with failures. Because the protagonist of this book, she was desirable, she was beautiful, she was powerful, intelligent. But she constantly failed. But she turned each one of them into a challenge. It's something else you have to beat. From DPS, I went on to Delhi University to do a bachelor in physics because I was very scientifically minded. I still am. When I'm woodworking, I look at wood as a material that's living, breathing. So I somehow, in family pressure, finished the degree and got a really lucky break to move to Singapore and work in, like every good Indian at some point, in computer science. But again, it was the same thing. What kept me up in the night? I have literally thought up code in the shower because it was a problem to be solved. That's what science is. It's a problem to be solved. And I loved that idea.
Woodworking is that I fail and fail and fail, but I know what I want in the end. It's just a problem to be solved.
So today we'll start off by learning about wood, and while I teach you, I'll also have Jyoti with us here. She'll be learning from me, hopefully. Actually, Jyoti, can you just put up your hands like that? She has 10 fingers right now. I promise she will leave with all 10 fingers if she listens to me. This is just something you need to be careful of. The tools we will be working with are extremely powerful, but as long as you respect them, they'll respect you. Otherwise, there'll be less fingers to apply nail polish on. Make sure that you have no loose hair, no loose outfits, nothing that can get caught in machines and stuff we will be using. So wear like old clothes, but also try to put on an apron. We'll be working with wood dust and later with stains and paints. We have to wear a mask. There's a lot of dust that we inhale, and to minimize that, you can never cut it out completely. You wear this. Because I work in this workshop about 365 days a year, so I get to wear this. This is a cartridge mask. And to help you hear me, I will not be wearing this today, but this is what I would normally wear. And if you're going to be doing this professionally, you should too. Another thing, if you've seen wood being cut and played with, there's a lot of chips that fly into your eyes and into your face. So we will both be wearing these protective glasses. Again, these are extremely cheap. So one of the best ways to figure out what kind of wood it is from its cross section. These are engineered wood, right? So these are still wood, but these didn't directly come off of a tree, as it were. So what has happened here is, this is called plywood. So plywood tends to be one of the strongest engineered wood we have, because the planks, the plies of the wood get put perpendicular to each other, and it ends up creating a really strong material. Wood is constantly alive. It's always alive. So there are two things that kill wood for us. One is the moisture, and one is predators, termites and wood borers. It has been engineered to be resistant to those things. However, plywood is also, while being strong, very flexible. So let's say if you're making a big bookshelf, and if you have a shelf, a long shelf in the middle, if you don't support it properly, then the plywood would start sagging after a while from the weight of the books and stuff like that. So therefore, for shelves like that, we use something called a block board. It's two plies of wood again, but in the middle are strips, and you can see here like that, see? These are like strips about this wide and this long that are inside the wood. So this makes the wood extremely rigid, because these thick pieces of wood are not going to bend. It's also engineered, it also goes through the same process we talked about, but as you can see, there are gaps here. So just imagine if I was trying to put a nail or a screw through, if I go through one of these gaps, I'm not going to get any bite, right? So I can't use this when I'm joining a lot of pieces together. This is ideal for just having a flat surface like a tabletop, or having a bookshelf, like I said. Finally, the wood that I love working with the most. This is also the most difficult to work with. This is natural wood, and the reason you will find out is that it actually has the rings on it. Tells you the age of the wood as well. So the older the tree, the tighter the rings, and the harder the wood. So this right now is a piece of teak wood, and there are about over 40,000 varieties of wood in this world. Also, when you're making furniture like a chair or legs of a table, something that requires a lot of strength, you will always use natural solid wood. This is pretty much what it looks like when it comes to us. Once you put it through the processes, and we'll go through some of those processes today, you end up with wood faces that look like this. So as you can see, the beauty of what is called the face, right? And this shape It's called the cathedral shape. It's pretty obvious why. So this is what your piece is going to start off looking like, and this is what it's going to end up looking like. And you'll have to do a lot of hard work in the middle. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, let's begin. So these are two pieces of wood. They're about the same size, right? So I want you to hold one in your right hand and one in your left hand and pick them up. Is there a significant weight difference? Right. So this is just a piece of softwood, or it's much lighter. So the same piece, this is much, much lighter. So of course, the strength of this is also much less than this one. So whenever you're building something that needs to bear a lot of weight, you want to use wood that's denser, so stronger. And these are often used for non-weight bearing stuff. So today we will be making like a serving platter, and really you're not going to be serving something very heavy on it. So we will be using lighter, softer wood. Wood is obviously a scarce resource, right? It's coming off of a tree, and we have many, many things in the news nowadays, if you read about it, about the endangering of entire forests. So as much as possible, if you want to be responsible and if you can fit it into your project, I try to use recycled wood. Sometimes I recycle wood from existing furniture because some trees died for it, so never waste it, right? So as you can see in this wood, the dark parts are called heartwood and the soft parts are called sapwood. Sapwood tends to be a little bit softer, heartwood tends to be a little bit harder. That's it. When you're building something, you look out for these things here. They're one of the weakest parts of the wood. This is called a knot. This is where a branch had come out of. So sometimes if you're, let's say, trying to make a table leg, try not to include a knot in that if possible, because that's weak. Figure out what you're making, how much weight it's going to bear. This house has young children. They're going to be running around. If I make a chair for them, there's quite a chance one of the children is going to drag that chair around. Or if there's a table, there's a chance that somebody's going to be jumping on that table. How it looks, the design, the aesthetics of the design is one part of it, but the functionality of this design. Is it really going to serve the function not only for me, but where it's going to live? So design is about problem solving. It's when you get it right, nobody even notices that it's right because you've solved the problem, right? I spent about 6 odd years in America. America has that spirit of problem solving around their homes. And I got caught up in it. And it was so new and so different from everything I'd ever experienced. And most importantly, there was a space called Station North 2 Library, and that's exactly what it sounds like. In fact, we need more of these, and in India, where somebody could go in and, like, you take out a book from the library, you take out a tool from the library, you use it, and then you bring it back. So it's an extremely supportive environment where you get to learn a skill without any judgment, and taught me not in boxes of this is woodworking, but kind of felt like this is problem solving. So this piece of wood is not straight, okay, this is the machine we use and this is how we get it straight. This is how you look at grain. This is how you decide how you will put a piece of wood through the machine. So everything, again, taught from this very intelligent, non-conformist, problem-solving point of view. And that's how I fell in love with woodworking. So today we're going to use a few power tools. Have you worked with any power tools before? Have you used a mixie? Yeah. Okay, so you have used a power tool. That's pretty much it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fear associated with these, and they are very powerful. But then, you know, you can have an accident with a mixie too. So it's just about respecting the tool, understanding how to use it correctly, and making sure that you take all of the precautions. So this particular thing is called the circular saw. So the heavier the tool, the more flat it will stand, right? It won't try to run away from us. It will be like really stable. The most number of accidents do not happen while you're using the tool. It happens before and after. So it's really important to have this blade, the safety over the blade, which will go on as soon as you have lifted the blade from any material that you're cutting. You will find circular saws in the market which are used locally, which don't have this safety. However, it's not recommended for the most part because it's an extremely dangerous tool. A couple of adjustments we do is, one of the first things you'll see is, do you see numbers written here?
Yes.
This is to set the angle of the blade, okay? Is release the lever there. Yeah, just a little bit, enough. And now, can you set it to, let's say, 30 degrees? Yeah, tighten it. The lines are lined up?
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been set to 30 degrees. So this will cut at a 30-degree angle from the surface. There are a few different kinds of cuts. One is a straight cut, so it's going to just go straight along the material. And then this is called the bevel cut, which is going to create a bevel along the side when we have it set to any angle. The bevel cut is used a lot in like edges of tables, sides of stools, etc., because it gives a nice shape to it. And do you see this lever back here? This is to set the depth of the blade. Okay? Now, the blade itself is stable. It doesn't move. The shoe, the base plate, is what moves. I want you to just release the lever on the side. Yeah, move it up. Now move the thing up and down, right? So you get a sense of that, right? Okay. So let's say we pull it all the way up, and you see how much blade is exposed? So this is how much material can be cut. If you move it all the way down, and you see how much blade is exposed, only this much material can be cut. So these are the two adjustments that we make with this tool. Always every adjustment with the tool plugged out. It doesn't matter if you remember to switch it on and off, always keep it plugged out, because the trigger is right here. If you're picking it up from the handle and you press the trigger by mistake, then you can end up hurting yourself really badly. Now I'm going to plug it in. So now, before we start with the actual cutting of the wood, and I take you through that, I want you to put on your mask and your safety goggles. So the first thing we have to do is figure out what are we cutting out, right? We don't want the metal bits here, we don't want the metal bits here, we don't want the broken bits here. So we're going to use something called the straight edge. Basically going to help us create 90-degree angles. Now this is why we often see carpenters wearing pencils behind their ears. Because imagine if your pencil wasn't here and you had done this and then you realized your pencil was in your drawer, I think you would hate yourself. Some tools like your measures, tape measures, etc., keep them on you. There's another version of this which is called the tri-square, which I also want to introduce you to. And here, as you see, if I use the tri-square on this edge, it gives me a slightly different angle than we did with this one. So we're just going to use the tri-square right now, just to get a really accurate idea where the cut's supposed to be. These are our line of cut, the cut lines, right? This is where we will cut along. Can you see two things that say 0 and 45 here?
Yes.
Okay. Now 0 means that the line of cut should be aligned with the 0 because you're cutting in a straight angle. 45 means, when remember you set the angle of this to 45, then the 45 here, the 45 here should align with this line. okay? So you sometimes have to double check just to make sure that you're making the cut in the right place. So what we will do you see this part, the fence here? This has to actually run along a straight edge so that it gives you a really clean straight line. What we will do is take a piece of wood that's really straight and clamp it down where this line is supposed to be. Next is doing the clamping process. That's why we are on this edge of the table, because our line of cut has to be off the table, okay? So that when you're cutting, you don't cut the table as well, right? So I told you we need a straight edge for that fence to run against. So you will hold this here. So you go left, you go as inside as possible. Now I want you to turn it on the right. Now the two main things that you have to do with the saw, which we discussed: depth of cut, how deep the blade is right now. I release it a little bit. Okay. You don't have to hold it back. You let it do its thing, but you hold on with your left hand to this hold here, with your right hand on this, with your index finger on the trigger. That's it. Plug the tool in, pull it towards the fence, right?
India is rich in masters of woodworking. However, that connection between the masters and the schools and the institutions hasn't been made. So we need schools and institutions to actually have the tools with which we will teach the children. Because this is a craft. It is not taught by books and by lectures. It is taught by doing. If you're going to do something that is your choice, that goes against the norms, be very sure about why. Take confidence from the fact that you knew why. Even if all you'll ever do is make plates, make chopping boards.
Now the blade should not be touching the material when you start. So it's just behind, right? The blade is just behind. No, you can go closer. Yeah, now a little bit further away. Yeah, just about there, right? So as soon as you've finished your cut, it's ideal to lift it up, because remember I told you that even after you leave the trigger, it goes on for a few more seconds. So if you lift it up, the safety will come on. So now that we have cut our piece of wood, we now want to smoothen the surfaces a little bit more. Actually, this is a pretty clean piece of wood already, but we will still smoothen this, and I think you'll be quite amazed how beautiful the wood looks. This machine, it's called a random orbital sander. So it has this base pad, which is kind of like a Velcro, and we use these Velcro sanding paper. So if you notice the sandpaper, they all have numbers on it. So the lower the number, the rougher the sandpaper. So the smoothest, of course, will give you the smoothest finish. The roughest finish. Start with the lowest grit to take off the most material, right? First take off the major part of it. Then we use the middle grade to give it a smoother finish, get rid of like little lines, etc. And then we use this final grit to give it an absolute smooth finish. The highest grit is number 60 that we are using. You can use 40, but 60 for this kind of wood is enough. The next, we're just going double up. From 60, we're going up to 120. From 120, we're going up to 240. When you like finally use something like 1800 grit or 2400 grit sandpaper on it, it literally brings out its own oil. It'll start shining. I will teach you how to hold the trigger in. Plus, you have these numbers at top. These decide the speed of the rotation. So usually with this, we'll start at about a 4 and see how we are doing. This is something that's going to produce a lot of dust. So you absolutely have to wear a mask. Press the trigger. It's already like a smoother than this part, right? So you see even the pencil lines that we had made, those are gone, right? So this is the part that we haven't done yet, and this is the part that we just did. And the part that we sanded up to 600 grit. First of all, just to the touch, this is extremely smooth. When something has been sanded up to a certain grit, you can see it's shining by itself. So the higher the grit goes, the smoother it's going to get. So we will use something called a jigsaw to cut some curves into this. It has a very narrow blade and a fairly flexible blade, right? And it cuts in an up and down motion. Some will have actual numbers here to decide the speeds. Some of them are pretty much the sensitive trigger, where the harder you push, the faster it'll get, the softer you push, the slower it'll get. But for the most part, we'll keep it at a medium speed because this is a very soft piece of wood. It doesn't need a lot of speed. What we will do is we'll flip the piece around and cut it, back to front. So that way the cut in the front is clean, and if there's any chipping or anything like that, it'll be at the back. We'll just trace it out a little bit. Fantastic. So this is what it looks like finally. Like if you run your fingers, it's really sharp. Mostly finished products, you don't want it to be that sharp, right? So I'm just going to do a little bit of sanding, bring it down to more or less where it's all like rounded around the edges, and then we will just apply some finishes on it and make it beautiful, even more than it is now. We had talked about the pores of the wood. I had compared the surface of the wood to our skin and how to protect ourselves from conditions, weather and stuff. We tend to put moisturizer. We're basically filling up the pores, right? So what we're going to do is first apply something called, in Hindi it's called alsi ka tel, boiled linseed oil. What this does is it gets absorbed into the pores and then it polymerizes. So it fills up the pores. And if the pores are filled up, then moisture doesn't have a chance to enter it, right? So therefore the movement in the wood will be decreased. So we need to put on our gloves. We shouldn't work without them because a lot of these chemicals are abrasive. So we're going to pour in a little bit. So I usually would dilute this down a little bit with turpentine oil. Just I would say about 70-30 mix. What this does is it makes the absorption of this material into the wood quicker. So we're going to take rags like these, just dip it into the oil and then go with the grain and just wipe it on. You will see how fast this is getting absorbed into the wood. Now usually what I would do is if I'm doing, again, fine furniture, if I'm doing anything that for basically a luxury product or even like a final product, I would take, this process itself would take 3 days, between 2 and 3 days. You would basically wipe this product on, the linseed oil on, and then you would literally cook it in the sun. because this needs to, there is one part is drying to touch, and then the curing process requires almost 24 hours in the sun. Most importantly, once you see that the oil is no longer being absorbed into the surface, you take a clean piece of cloth and you wipe the surface oil down. This is extremely important. Again, like I said, it makes the wood really strong. It makes the wood really impermeable to moisture, to some bugs. So it was used to cure cricket bat, like alsi ka tel for cricket bats used to be quite common. And we're going to leave it out in the sun, in the air, to cure for a couple of hours. We can leave it as is, maybe apply a coat of polyurethane or something like that to seal it, or lacquer to seal it, or we can stain the wood, which also brings out the grain. So we're going to use, there are various colors of stains available. We're just going to use something that's a walnut stain. If you go to a paint shop and ask for dhoti, they will give you these. And these are old dhotis, which means they don't absorb a lot of moisture or any kind of liquid. So when you dip it into any kind of oils or stains or something, the cloth itself does not take it in. And it's very important, otherwise you'll end up with streaks. I'm gonna dip this in and then wipe it on. We want to make sure there's nothing left on the surface. So we're going to use a dry cloth to wipe it, because otherwise we'll end up with splotches. We can wait for about 10 minutes and apply another coat of stain. So sometimes I like to leave it just like this because I like the very matte finish that it gives.
So understanding this material is a hard skill. It depends upon you how deep you want to go, but it requires a lot of reading and working with the material. And of course, you need to learn how to use both hand tools and power tools to shape, bend, whatever the material.
So just for demonstration, we are going to apply a little bit of lacquer, a top coat, just on a little part of it, and you will be able to see. You see there's a fairly significant difference when we wipe it on and originally, because of two reasons. One, the lacquer itself is always diluted with thinner. The second reason there's a stark difference is that this has added a layer of shine. We're going to use a water-based product, a water-based PU, polyurethane, a tiny little bit. We dilute it with a little bit of water. In fact, the mask that we wear, it's much more important to wear it during any kind of spray paints, anything lacquer-based, than it is when using anything water-based. So water-based stuff, there's almost no odor. So if you see, this is the part where we are applying water-based product, right? And this is the thinner. So you see there's a distinct difference between the two. Once it dries off, you won't even see the finish on top, but it would have sealed the wood. So let's say if I'm making a dining table or something that would get a lot of exposure to liquids, even a little bit of heat and stuff like that, I would use a finished product like PU or lacquer or something like that, so that it seals the surface, so it forms a protective seal on top of the wood. So these are the various finishes, and of course we have only just touched the tip of the iceberg, as it were, on the different kinds of finishes we can apply on wood. But this basically gives you an idea of how to convert something that used to look like this to something pretty like that, right? Did you have fun?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So I think one of the reasons I'm still surviving is that I invested little by little, let it grow really organically. As and when I started getting more people interested, more clients, I put more money in, and now I have a large 600 square feet workshop. But honestly, I started from my parents' backyard, where now we have a washing machine. So that was my entire space. It's just been a very calculated risk with my own money throughout.
So woodworking has become more than just a skill I picked up. About 7 years ago, I actually learned the techniques of woodworking. But since then, it became a language for me to express myself. I always took risks. I tried to drill books, and I did succeed, and I made something called the Harry Potter table. Recently, I started hearing a lot about bent wood furniture. I don't really have the apparatus to actually bend wood, so nothing to steam wood with, no hot pipe. So I thought, you get these thin strips of wood called margins. These are fairly cheap. They're about 4 rupees a feet. So they're fairly narrow too. Why not just see what happens if I start bending it? So I just kind of wet the wood a little bit, take a brush, rub some water on it. Since I don't have a form and I need to hold it against something, I'm just going to screw. So this is my first screw, and this is where we will start the bending. And to hold it in place, I'm just going to put a screw behind it. And we are going to see how far it will come with me.
I was finally creating something. But every aspect, every skill learned, and then the challenges of it were unexpected.
The idea is to see how much of a curve I can get in this piece of wood. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so sometimes it doesn't.
I broke many pieces, putting them through the machines. In fact, I chopped off the top of my finger during woodworking because I wasn't using a particular kind of saw very carefully. It grew back, but it still stayed up. So I think learning to deal with the unexpected was a constant challenge with woodworking, simply because it was such an alien skill for me.
And we restart with another piece of wood. This time we will maybe twist it a little bit lesser and stop right about there. Is about as far as this will go. The idea of doing the bent wood lamination is to laminate, as in glue up, multiple pieces in the same shape over and over again.
As far as the hard skills have been really important, I think the soft skills are what led to me being shaped the way I am today. Accepting failures as challenges, ability to listen, and listen to critique, but also understanding whether it's coming from a healthy place. And most importantly, something that has helped me survive in these really difficult times is adaptability. As long as you can approach, and this is wider than just your business, as long as you can approach every challenge in your life with that lens, from humility, from respect and kindness, they get easier.